For tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in the second segment, we are going to be giving a quick recap of the games that went down from last night. There weren't that many games that went down last night, given how most of the games went down on Sunday. So honestly, since I didn't go over a lot of the games that on Sunday because of the recent problems on the last stream, I'll go ahead and cover a lot. I'll go ahead and cover a lot of those games as well, since there weren't that many games that went on yesterday. So it's really no big deal. But let's start with the big one, and the Brooklyn Nets finally winning a game with against the Memphis Grizzlies, holding the Memphis Grizzlies to 86 points. Phenomenal defensive work right there, and this is the first win under the new interim head coach for the Brooklyn Nets. And looking at the box scores, everybody was relatively even in terms of scoring and in terms of production. So it was a great overall team win. I wish they would have won by a little bit more, given how bad the Memphis Grizzlies offense has been and how bad they were in that game. So I really wish they would have blown them out by more, but I digress. Bridges only had 11 points. Cam Thomas only had 14 points. Dennis Schroeder had 18. Dorian Finney-Smith had 13. Claxton had 10. So it's really starting to look like, when I look at this box scores, it honestly, I might get flamed for saying this, it looks like a college box score. Like, you know how in college where in NCAA basketball, there aren't that many, in some of the big teams, they might have that one guy that scores a lot, but every other player most of the times, a lot of the players would finish with relatively even numbers. They would finish with you'd see the box scores would be he has 18 points, he has 16, he has 14. The scoring is relatively spread, and it's much more spread in college because there's a different play style in college depending on the coach you have. A lot of coaches don't necessarily good coaches. In good programs, they don't necessarily run isolation. They share the ball between all of their players. And seeing as he used to be a head coach for UConn, I'm not really surprised that a lot of the scoring here, with all of the players in the lineup, is relatively balanced. And that is team basketball, and team basketball is always the right way to play because it's you have a team for a reason, and you have these players for a reason. So I'm all for this team ball. If this is going to be the new offensive set that Brooklyn wants to try running, where they're much more sharing the ball, I'm 100% down for that because they do have the talent to be able to share the ball evenly and be able to score just enough to be able to make it over that hump and be able to outscore the other team. And especially if the other team scores 86 points. I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr. and Lamar Stevens were the only bright spots on the offense for the Memphis Grizzlies. Jaren Jackson ended with 15, and Stevens ended with 17. The shooting from Memphis was really, really bad. It was horrible, the shooting from Memphis. Except from, obviously, Lamar Stevens. Lamar Stevens had 17 points, 8 of 9. He only missed one shot. But Jaren Jackson Jr., he had most of his points from the free throw line. He went 2 for 12. And G.G. Jackson went 1 for 13. Zaire Williams went 3 for 11. So, obviously, the shots just weren't falling down for Memphis in this game. But I don't care. I'm a Nets fan. Everyone knows that. Let's go Nets. So, with that game out of the way, let's go over to the other New York team who almost lost to the Detroit Pistons. Now, that might be a problem for the Knicks. Josh Hart ended the game with 23 and the and one bucket to make sure that they didn't lose to the Pistons. Jalen Brunson ended the game with 35 and 12. Jesus, he was LeBron in this game. He played 40 minutes. And who else? DiVincenzo ended with 21. So once again, the Villanova boys. They're out there performing. Like, it's the fact that they decided to team up all of those players together is one of the smartest moves that an organization has done. Like, they knew that the chemistry there between all those players was strong. It's fantastic. And obviously, like, the team, when you're in a close game with the Pistons, obviously, like, that's a problem. Granted, I'm not going to say that the Pistons don't have talent, but they're the worst team in the NBA. Not recently, but in this season, they broke the record for having the longest losing streak ever in NBA history. They are bad, and when you are almost losing to them, like, look, they've only won 8 games. When you're almost losing to them and when the game is close, it's a serious problem, in my opinion. A serious problem. And Cade Cunningham ended the game with 32 points, and that was really the only bright spot on the offense for the Detroit Pistons. And that's really the only bright spot on the Detroit Pistons, if we're going to be real. Monty Williams had a lot to say after this game because there was apparently a no call that he felt should have been a foul, and it would have ended the game right there. But unfortunately, it wasn't called, and call it unlucky, but regardless, like, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't understand why they're, like, so uptight about this game, or like why Monty's so uptight about this game. You are not leading your team to anything. So what's the big deal? You're not leading your team to anything. The Raptors beat the Pacers because, like, the Pacers, I swear, they could beat any team in the entire league, and they can also lose to any team in the entire league. It's granted, I guess you could say that for all of the teams, but these guys, it's insane how they will, like, beat great teams and then they'll immediately lose to to mid teams. Scotty Barnes ended the game with a triple-double, 21, 12, and 12. Obviously, the best player on the team for the Raptors and the best player going into the game. Who else had some great scoring? R.J. Barrett had 24 points. I haven't really talked much about R.J. Barrett, but he's been phenomenal ever since he went to Canada. That new environment for him has really changed him and his play style. And I will say he's a much more efficient scorer now on the Raptors. And I feel like that's a confidence thing because something about playing for a nation and for because since the Raptors are the only Canadian team, they sort of represent a lot more than just Toronto. They represent, like, all of Canada. And having your entire nation, like, cheer for you and be excited to have you on the team after being traded, obviously, like, that is a huge confidence booster because, like, you get to play at home and all of the fans and all of the people at home love you. So that change in scenery, definitely what R.J. Barrett needed. And Emmanuel quickly also showed up on the box scores with 19 points, and he shot 8 for 16 from the field. So very impressive from the Toronto Raptors, and a great win for them overall. I think that this changes anything in terms of their placement and like the expectations I have for them? No, not really. They're not going to make the play-in my I don't think they're going to I don't think they're going to do anything once they get in the play-in, and they just have to rebuild. They're lucky that they're not anywhere in like the 14th or the 15th seed, or maybe they're unlucky because but they have the pieces, and they just need to get the chemistry. And just looking at like the standings in the East, good Lord, the Wizards and the Pistons, they've won 9 and 8 games. Like, what? What is that? Like, the fact that there's an argument for a team being worse than a team that just broke the record for losing consecutive games, like, that is absolutely insane to me. Because, like, what? How? Especially, like, Jordan, like, it just shows that Jordan Poole was just not what they were expecting whatsoever. He was not the player that anyone thought he was. And it's a little bit funny given how he was given the second Splash Brother name. But not the second, the third Splash Brother name. And now all of a sudden everybody just can't stand him or like just dislikes him. But the Indiana Pacers and their offense, they obviously, like, since they can't play defense and their defense is really, really bad and really lazy, they have to outperform on offense. And Halliburton wasn't there on the offense this time. So I wonder where all the Halliburton defenders are now, saying that he's better than Trae Young, saying that he's better than, like, De'Aaron Fox, all of those other point guards. Like, get out of here. He's not. But he ended the game with 9 points and 7 assists. Now, I don't know about you, but Trae Young would have ended the game with like 25 and 10. At least he's consistent with it most of the time. He's not really consistent shooting the ball. Like he will have those games where he's like 8 for 24, like 10 for 24, stuff like that. Really inefficient shooting, but he's had the most 30 and 10 games of anyone since entering the league, and it's really impressive. So Benedict Mathurin was actually the player that led the Pacers in scoring, 34 points. Pascal Siakam also showed up, 27 points per game. No, 27 points, 9 rebounds and 6 assists. But yeah, again, it all comes down to how well Halliburton plays. And most of these losses that I've reviewed on this podcast, it's all come down to Halliburton's play and the fact that he didn't produce enough in this game. And if the Pacers had some defense, they wouldn't have to worry about needing to produce on the offense all that much. But that's just my personal opinion. I mean, obviously, like these NBA players, they're gonna follow the offense and whatnot, and they're not gonna really play that much defense because that's just the state of this league right now. And looking at the box scores, yeah, like the team really underperformed in terms of shooting the ball. They shot 13 of 42 from 3, and like obviously, like if that's not ideal, if you are the Pacers, like you need to be able to score efficiently, given how bad like the offense is, like the defense is on your team, and how every team can just score on you however they want. So with that in mind, again, my trajectory and like the way my trajectory for the Pacers is going to stay the same. I think they're only going to be a first-round team, and their defense is going to be the downfall of them in the playoffs. And my opinion is not going to change because so far the Pacers haven't shown me that it deserves any change. Like, it's been the same old thing. And there was also, speaking of De'Aaron Fox, I did talk about De'Aaron Fox for like a few seconds. The Kings recently matched up against the Miami Heat the other day, and the Kings ended up losing 121-110 with, again, no Jimmy Butler in the lineup. So the fact that the Heat were able to beat the Kings with no Jimmy Butler, serious problem. And it also just shows everyone before the playoffs start just how good the Miami Heat as a team actually are. Now, Caleb Martin ended the game with 16 points. Jamie Jacquez Jr., rookie, really good, ended the game with 26 points. Bam Adebayo ended the game with 28 and 10. So, great performance from the Miami Heat from when with Jimmy Butler out of the lineup. Kevin Love also showed up with 19 points on 15 minutes. He shot 6 of 9 from the field. Nice. He's obviously this Heat team, it's always been a great team, but once the playoffs roll around, most of the attention shifts over to Jimmy, which is unfair because playoff Jimmy, in my opinion, like he's a myth. He's only good in the first round, and that's it. Every other time he underperforms and does less than what he does in the second round. So, in my opinion, playoff Jimmy is just a myth. But a lot of people don't want to believe that, and a lot of people don't want to talk about that. Even when, like no one talks about Jimmy over the media. They only talk about him in the postseason. And it's like, why is it that he gets different treatment than most of the other stars in this league? Like, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, Joel Embiid, they get criticized for sitting out in a bunch of games. Jimmy Butler's doing that. Jimmy Butler's been doing that exact same thing because he doesn't really care about NBA accolades. So Where's the talk coming from him? Where's the talk about him not being available for his team? Where's that? Why is it that only those star players get that treatment, but Jimmy Butler is like, oh, he's different, and like, oh, he's a playoff monster? He's not. He only plays well, and he only had one great series, like one great playoff series last year. Once he went into the second round, he started to play worse. He started to play a little bit like his usual self, which is not bad, but it's like, it's not great. It's good. And then when he went to the Eastern Conference Finals, he played worse than like he ever played before, because like it was as if the pressure was getting to him, and like no one was really talking about it because it's like, oh, playoff Jimmy, he hit 2 free throws, and like, oh, he closed the game out. Like there was more to that happened in the game than just the final minutes. But obviously, like the final minutes are more important. But like that's just me. I don't want to talk much about Jimmy Butler. Sabonis ended the game with 14, 10, and 14, so another triple-double. He's one of those players that's also a triple-double machine. Didn't get selected for the All-Star game, even though he's like top 10 in the MVP rankings, which is honestly hilarious when you think about it. Just shows like how the voters and like how the players, like they can't pick to save their lives. De'Aaron Fox ended the game with 27 points, 13 of 24, and Keegan Murray ended the game with 28 points, shooting 6 of 7 from 3. So, a little bit surprising that, a little bit surprising that the Kings weren't able to pull out with this one. I mean, Kevin Huerter went 5 of 15, so I guess that makes sense. Like his production wasn't really helping much, but still, like and they shot 52% from the field, and they still lost. They shot better from 3 as well compared to the Heat, and they still lost, which is crazy to me. Like because they lost by 11, and it looked like they were like playing relatively well. Like that's a serious problem for the Kings, and it might be a good sign for the Miami Heat, given how they were able to beat the Kings by 11, with the Kings playing some great basketball without having their best player. Like, I mean, Miami does this like once in a blue moon. So I wouldn't be surprised if Miami makes another deep playoff run, just because like they're Miami. Like we've seen them do it before. We've seen it. Like, and I know I just talk bad about playoff Jimmy, but like we've seen him do a lot of things in the postseason that warrant that type of behavior and that warrant that type of thinking. And we have a little bit of more time for in this segment. So another game that I did want to talk about was the because recently, like we were talking about the Kings, so I might as well talk about the Kings again. The Kings, they beat the Clippers the other day, 123-107. So the fact that they come into losing to Miami by that much, it's very odd. It's a serious problem, like for the Kings, in my personal opinion, because again, they played one of their best basketballs, overall. So very surprised about that. And again, they do that in this game. I feel like they played better. They definitely played better in this game. They shot 40% from 3, and they took a lot more threes in this one. And the Clippers sort of didn't show up in this game. It was one of those meh games for the Clippers. Westbrook going 3 of 10, only 8 points. Kawhi Leonard 7 of 18. James Harden 4 of 13, and no Paul George. So they weren't at 100%, so I guess it makes sense that they weren't able to come out with this win. They're getting new jerseys, by the way, so and a new arena and a new logo, all of that. They're getting a complete rebrand, so we'll see like if this rebrand will change the Clippers' mentality, or if they'll just stay as being the old Clippers that just blow leads in the playoffs. We'll see about that, but with that, we're out of time with this third segment. So join me for the fourth segment, where I go over the NBA power rankings that were released just a few hours ago. So I will be right back after this short break to talk about those power rankings, and we'll talk about both the last week ones, and we'll talk about the new ones now and like what's changed. So I will be right back.